Good evening and welcome to another edition of FICCI COVID Bulletin. Today we have a very wonderful guest with us, Dr. Anup Warrior. Welcome, Dr. Warrior.
Thank you. Thank you.
A little bit about Dr. Warrior. After spending more than 7 years at KIMS Trivandrum, for the past 8 years, Dr. Anup Warrior is with Aster DM. He is the Chief of Medical Services at Medicity Kochi and holds a postgraduate degree in general medicine as well as a fellowship in infectious diseases. He is board certified in infectious disease management and has got a great depth of experience in the management of COVID. Welcome again, Dr. Anup.
Thank you, Dr. Vikas.
So going through your profile, I realized that you were just the right person at the right time to manage COVID cases as they were rising.
I hope so.
So we've got questions coming in from the audience. The first question is, so we know that there was a talk for many decades about a pandemic, the fear of a pandemic, and a lot of celebrities and developers had talked about it. And now that we have faced the real actual pandemic over the past 2 years, what can the people do generally, in the face of this kind of a pandemic or the fear of such further pandemics?
So one thing which we realize is that over the years, if you look at any disease which had a pandemic potential, it was primarily respiratory borne. Okay, so the thing is that in the event that either this virus or the next virus or any other pathogen, we are primarily looking at transmission through respiratory route and some sort of a respiratory illness. One of the underlying factors for prevention of respiratory illness is about indoor air quality. And we know for COVID also that has been true. We have studied this in great detail for tuberculosis, which is other very well-known endemic airborne disease. For influenza, this has been true. We have clusters in offices, schools, and homes when there is influenza. So my sincere hope is that the common public take this as an important thing, the indoor air quality, and the awareness about indoor air quality improves. And all of us do our bit in ensuring that the ventilation and other key parameters of ventilation are managed, both at home, in our workplaces, hospitals, and all these places. So that is a foolproof pandemic preparedness, because your PPEs and your your other masks, etc., all have loopholes, while adequate, appropriate ventilation is something which we can bank upon to sort of help us out.
Thank you so much. This is very important, and I agree with you absolutely that there is, you can't stress enough how important the indoor air quality is. We have another question that asks about the new therapeutic options available or anticipated by the medical community. Do you see any radical game changers on the horizon as far as COVID is concerned?
So when you look at the data that's evolved for COVID, the last 1.5 to 2 years, you see that we have about 3 categories. So we have a category which was like an antiviral sort of thing, which is a chemical which would reduce the multiplication of the virus in the body. Then suddenly you had a group of monoclonal antibodies, which are artificially developed antibodies which can neutralize the virus. And we had a subsect where it would target at the host response, or how the human body will respond to the virus, and which was the main reason of complications like severe pneumonia and multi-organ dysfunctions. So in terms of the antivirals, we have Paxlovid, which is out there approved and which we expect to come in India. That is because it has been shown to be more effective than the available molnupiravir for the present strain, the Omicron, which has been circulating. We also have a new monoclonal antibody called sotorumab, which is again approved in the West by the FDA and all, which is again we are expecting, which is again good for Omicron. So these are the 2 new things we hope will come into India also, which might help us in tackling the present surge of Omicron better. The third part is primarily on the host immune response part, where steroids have stood the test of time, and from the start until now, all of us bank and we hope the steroids do their job well. The other immunomodulators, which is this class of drugs called tocilizumab and baricitinib, and all these have been add-ons and not really been a game changer in that fact. So just to finally summarize and answer your question, there is a host of therapeutic options evolving in different categories as antiviral, antibodies, and in terms of immunomodulators. However, End of the day, we should remember that none of them are going to make a major change. The majority of them will help us manage complications, reduce complications, and prevent death, but not so much in managing the infection part.
Okay, so a follow-up question to that, this is from my side. As soon as a new drug is announced, we find that there is a rush, people just rush to get it. We appreciate, the way that science has risen and the governments have risen to the challenge, and it has been, record-breaking in the sense the speed with which we have brought about these new developments, the new drugs and the other treatments. But as soon as a new drug is announced, everybody thinks that that's the panacea and everybody rushes to get it. What's your opinion on that? How should that be approached?
So again, if you look at the history in the last 1.5 years, if you can call it history of COVID, you see that we started with FICCIs and azithromycin, and there was a lot of hue and cue about azithromycin, even between, it was even a diplomatic issue at that time. And after that, if you look at the list of drugs studied, there are more than 120 drugs studied in clinical trials in various forms for COVID. And a handful of them have gained the popularity, and even fewer have actually stood the test of time, have stood the level of evidence which we wanted to use safe. So for the general public, I would put it in this way. This is a disease where majority of the people get well without any intervention. They do not need any medicine, right? It's in majority of the people, they get well on their own. And this is a disease where a subset, unfortunately, do go into complications and all. So any medicine to prove its benefit in this kind of disease where majority get well on their own is a bit tough. It requires two things. It requires studies which include large number of patients. It requires studies done at multiple places together, what is called as multicentric study. So WHO has done this, and it is based on those multicentric large trials that we have just couple of drugs which have stood the test of evidence. So hence, again, to summarize, if a new drug comes into the market, if I am sick enough, I'll take that risk because it might be life-saving for me. But if it is mild, hold on, wait for the evidence to evolve. Look at if more studies come up from other places which support this. The toxicity or the adverse events of drugs will also evolve only over time. So if it's a disease where you are going to get better in a couple of days on your own, don't take a new drug. If you are sick, go ahead, try it because it might be life-saving for you at that time.
Yeah, that's an exceptionally important point made. And also, I believe that, as medical fraternity, the doctors are well aware of the latest advancements and the latest indications, and the government has also been, ahead of the curve, putting out guidelines as soon as, they have evidence. So probably what I understand from what you are saying is that people should rely on that medical advice and the guidelines and, not rush to get these medications.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think it requires a medical professional and public health authorities to do the proper review of evidence and to make that judgment whether this drug is right for you at that time.
Thank you. The next question we have is about long COVID. What is it? How does it present? And what organs does it involve? And how do you manage it?
So COVID, just like a couple of viral illnesses, even in the past, just even chikungunya had symptoms persisting months after that. So similarly, COVID also has been found to have symptoms persisting months after its primary infection. So arbitrarily, a rule of thumb, nothing very sacrosanct about that number, but most of these studies try to put 3 months as the cutoff, meaning any symptom due to COVID which persists after 3 months sort of labeled under the umbrella of long COVID. And as I told, it's an arbitrary figure taken up in most of the literature. And these symptoms can vary anywhere from head to toe. It starts with a lot of brain involvement in terms of what is called as brain fog, in where your cognitive abilities may be diminished and you may have difficulty in sleeping. Skin changes, starting from most common being hair loss, and then various varieties of rash and urticarial rash and irritation, etc. And then you have the lung and the heart involvement in terms of the reduced pulmonary or lung functions, either a reduced pumping function of the heart or in terms of inflammation of the heart, which might cause arrhythmias or abnormal rhythms. Then you have gut abnormalities like diabetes due to pancreatic involvement, thyroiditis due to so in fact it may have any symptom head to toe, a lot of musculoskeletal symptoms like fatigue and weakness, etc. But the good thing sort of about it is that we see over time it subsequently reduces, and it's only a handful or very few percentage actually where the symptoms last beyond a year or so. So we can be assured that yes, it do persist, but over time we see that it reduces, and in a year or so most of them do very well.
So that's very important, information on long COVID. Dr. Varia, would it also be recommended that, what you are saying, what I'm hearing is that it can practically involve any organ. So once you've had COVID, whenever you have any kind of other symptom or any other organ symptomatology, it would be probably wise to share with your doctor that you had COVID, like 3 months back or 2 months back, so that kind of adds to the entire information being given to the doctor to make a correct judgment.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So in the clinical differential diagnosis, or when we think of possibilities, we will definitely link these two information together.
And another question that's coming, and that's also linked to this multi-organ or multi-system, if we can call it that kind of nature of COVID, is and this is something that all of us as physicians have faced at one time or the other. People asking that I've just had COVID. How much time can I resume normal activity? And specifically, people have been asking about hitting the gym or getting into strenuous physical activity, running long distances. What's your take on that? Given that the respiratory and the cardiological systems are involved.
So rule of thumb is that you are the best judge of how far you can stretch your body. We should realize that there is an impact on the heart and on the lungs due to COVID, especially if it is severe. And based on that, the duration would vary. So it might not be an absolute cutoff for each and every person, or a common cutoff. So somebody who has severe disease would have more chance of heart and lung involvement, and hence you would need to wait longer. A very safe time for somebody who has severe disease, as I told, is about 3 months. And why is that so? As I mentioned, then you actually complete the period of acute, post-acute COVID, and then you go on to the long COVID. So if you are absolutely fine, you are able to carry out. So important thing to remember, it should be a graded practice. You get into your exercise, you get into your activities in a very graded fashion. Do not push yourself too hard. Take it slow, give it time. If your body adapts and is comfortable with that exertion and activity, then move on to the next stage. So rather than to fit a time frame in your mind, it is important that you fix your activity to the ability to actually do it in a comfortable fashion.
Yes, and just to add to that point, probably it would be correct to say that you don't have anything to prove to anybody by getting into rigorous activity immediately. He said, you should be graded, and you should let your body tell you how much use or abuse it can undertake.
Absolutely, very true, very true.
So we seem to have time for us. One more question: acting out in the coming months. So we've been into this thing for nearly 2 years. How do you see it acting out in the next coming months or years?
So we only have the experience of the pandemic flu to take back and understand how a pandemic. So we don't have other much examples to talk of. And so what we understand is that usually a pandemic of this sort lasts for about 3 to 5 years. And at that time, we did not have vaccination, and that is a true game changer in this pandemic, because we had rapid introduction of vaccines. And with that, we would probably expect the shorter end of it, that is 3 years, rather than the longer end of it, which we had without vaccine. So pretty optimistic that in the next 1.5 years, we would see this settling, be a part of the regular thing with the vaccination. We would not see severe disease or hospitalization, and we would be able to manage it like any other respiratory illnesses.
So what I understand is, based on the vaccine and the other treatments, you feel that we may be looking at normalization of life in the near future.
That is it.
Thank you very much. This is all the time we have today for questions. Thank you so much again, Dr. Anup Varia, for sharing your expertise with us. And thank you to all the audience for joining us on this edition of FICCI Fights COVID, our weekly